Welcome back, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to stream 8 of my modding tutorial. Today we have a pretty simple schedule. We don't really have anything big going on. I set aside this day just in case people had any questions or concerns. And just between me and you guys, I kind of set this day aside so that we would have an even 10 streams. But I'm glad that none of the previous streams have taken too much time. I think our longest one was perhaps... Was it last stream? Or was it stream 6? Or was it stream 5? I don't know. I don't think any of them have taken more than like 3 hours though. Which is perfect actually. Very, very good. And today I don't think is going to take too long at all. I do have about 3 things that people have asked me privately or on YouTube. Of course, if you have any further questions beyond this, or if you're on YouTube and you have questions, you know, that you didn't ask on stream, of course, you can simply join the Discord, and either I or other modders should be able to help you with whatever problems or questions you might be having. You have to forgive me for taking some drinks here. I always get a very dry mouth. So first up on our schedule, if I can pull up my stream overview here, we had a suggestion, or we had a question, I should say, how to allow heroes to increase stack limits in dungeons. And I will say that for this, we will not actually be making these changes to our mod. We will be making them directly to probably our modded game already, and this way we won't be, you know, putting in some weird changes here and there into our mod. We'll be keeping that generally pretty pristine for the original intent and design. So the Antiquarian is the only current hero class that increases the stack limit within a dungeon, as well as providing an additional loot table pull while interacting with curios or from fights. But for this question, we mainly just want to focus on how to increase stack limits. And this is incredibly easy. You really only need 2 files open. We can go ahead and actually open up the Antiquarian's hero file, which is in Heroes Antiquarian, and then her info file. And that is on my other screen. And we want the inventory folder, and we should see the stack limit, this base inventory extra stack limits file. If we open up, we see immediately this extra stack limit definition and the ID of Antiquarian Gold, and then the item type and the item ID that it affects, and then the amount that it affects it by. So a very easy way to find this is simply to copy and paste the ID into the find, and we can see this extra stack limit is defined right here in a single line. And even above that, we can see the extra curio and battle loot codes that are being applied, which calls the antique, of course, to pull random antiques from the battles or curios. So this is very simple. If we wanted to, say, increase the amount of heirlooms that could be held by the Crusader, for instance, or when you have a Crusader in your party, this is very, very simple to do. So let's go ahead and open up the Crusader's info file. And I'm just going to copy the existing stack limit codes. And I think putting them, yeah, directly under her skill selection, or his skill selection, I should say. And we're going to call these Crusader underscore Cress, and we're going to do this for each of the 4 heirloom types: Cress, Bus, Portraits, and Deeds. And if we come over to the base inventory stack limits, or if we create our own stack limits, just because it's good practice to do so. not in the loot, we want the inventory folder. Let's go ahead and copy the existing stack limits and name this our mod. Remember, we are not actually doing this within our mods directory simply because these are kind of suggestions, not part of the original design of our mod. So we come here and we can copy this. I'm going to copy this 4 times. Or actually, I'm going to not copy it 4 times. Not until we have our item type is heirloom. And if we wanted to check what these are named within the inventory file, they are in the currency. We can see that the type is heirloom, and then the IDs are portrait, bust, crest, deed, and the unused urn. Or crest, precisely. We can see heirloom, and then we'll just simply do crest, and then we'll do it for each of these. So we can come here, and I'm going to increase them by 2 for each stack. Crest, bust, deeds, and portraits. And this is triggering me. There we go. We'll make them uniform. Deeds. I'm just putting them randomly. Should not be doing that. Plus, deeds and portraits. Alright, perfect. And that's really all it takes. It's only those 2 files and pretty much however many lines you want for, to be affected. And you can do this with heirlooms, you can do this with gold, you can do this with gems, you can do this with any of the inventory item types. And I'm speaking here not out of official experience, but I believe you might be able to do negative stack limits. So, you have like this really powerful character, but he makes it so you can't carry as much home. I mean, we could always test it. We have extra time today. I don't think the 3 things that I want to show are going to take very much time, so we could always play around a little bit, do a little testing. So that should be it. I want to... What do we want to do? By the way, do you think it will ever be possible to increase the actual inventory size? Some people have done it. It's a little dirty how it's done. There's no way to really do it perfectly at the moment, but you can. I think it can get a little overpowered once you start doing that. I think it's better to play around with stack limits than it is to play around with inventory size. But that's my personal preference. So let's let up a town start here and hope that we have a Crusader. I did not load this up before stream, so it may take just a few extra seconds to start up compared to if I had already started it up. There is also no good way to test this, is there? There is. I know a way to test it. We're gonna have to use a little bit of dev cheats though. I'll look for the test. Go, let's put a table in here. Set this to H. And we're going to quickly load this back up. Increased size would be huge help for, let's say, collecting lore. Why? I think I made a boo-boo on accident. I did. Add a comma there. Unfortunately, lore cannot stack, and I will explain that very simply. Hopefully anybody who's watching has played Minecraft. If not, I will explain I will simply explain one of the mechanics of the game, and that is damage values on things like pickaxes or swords. So let's say you make 5, also welcome Nether. Let's say you make 5 iron pickaxes in Minecraft. Alright. And you proceed to use one of them to mine 10 stone, the second for 20, the third for 30, fourth for 40, and fifth for 50. It's going to give each of those pickaxes different damage values. And they're going to actually be different items, even though they're the same base item. And that's called metadata. And that's how journal pages work. Every journal page is a journal page, but not every journal page is the same journal page. And that's why they can't stack. It's like heirlooms. The only difference between the heirlooms and the journal pages is that the heirlooms actually have visual differences between the types. Otherwise, they are all the same base type. If we opened up, we can just open up our mod. Not the loot, we want the inventory file. We can see that these journal pages are all the same type, but the IDs are different, much like the metadata. So they can't stack because their IDs are different, just like our heirlooms are the same type, but different IDs. And now IDs can stack with themselves, as we see here with heirlooms, but they can't stack with journal pages because you can only ever earn a single page of a journal. If you could say earn, however many you wanted of journal page 0, you could set the stack limit to 100 and then they would stack, but you can't have stacking in between the IDs. Just like heirlooms can't stack in between the IDs. But let's get back to testing our stack limits. Hopefully that made sense. If it didn't, please let me know. We're just going to load up a random dungeon. Doesn't matter. I'm going to use a little bit of dev magic here to force a loot spawn. And let's take a look at what the stack limits should be. So the stack limits on portraits are 3, busts are 6, crests are 12, and deeds are also 6. So if I start pulling loot here, you can see that our stack limits have increased. Or at least they should have. They did for crests, they have not for others. In which case I might have found something, a simple bug. And that is you can only have a single stack limit increase on a character. And I don't know if that's intended or not, simply because I've never ever made extra stack limits before. That's always good. The thing is, if you're modding and you're experimenting, you will either find a lot of things that don't work, a lot of things that don't work the way you thought they worked, or you might find some bugs. That's always good. If anyone from Red Hook is watching, I don't know if that's intended or not. It's obviously on a big priority issue since it's not going to affect vanilla. But if they are indeed intended to have more than one stack limit, it would be a good thing to look into fixing that. But it did work for one, so we do know that you can increase stack limits for a single item if you wanted to, as it did definitely work for our crests here. And I'm glad someone suggested that because we might not have found that issue otherwise. But it is very, very simple, as you can see, to add in your own stack limits. So we can close all that. Second up on our list, and again, if you have any questions, we're not going in order here. If you just want to ask something or you want to see something explained, or if any of the things explained in the previous streams that'll pull up again in any of the previous days. If you have any questions about what was shown and you want something repeated, now is the day to do so, because the next two streams are going to be very, very focused on the map. That's going to take a lot of time and a lot of patience. And if you want this, if you want to see the schedule, simply type !schedule in the chat, and Nightbot should give you a link to the image, just so you can refresh yourself on what's taken place already. Alright, so the next viewer suggestion that I got was Plague Grenade boosting the stun chance of Disorienting Blast. Apologize, I seem to be dropping a few frames here. I will repeat that because I think that those frame drops did occur at the same time I was talking. The suggestion was that Plague Grenade boosting the stun chance of Disorienting Blast, which is really cool. I think the only thing in vanilla that boosts another skill's effect would be Rake on the Abomination. But this person wants the Plague Doctor's Plague Grenade to boost the stun chance of one of her other skills. And that's a fantastic question. First thing we're going to one up before anything else is the Plague Doctor's info file, because we're going to be modifying Plague Grenade directly. And it's going to be boosting the stun chance, of course, of Disorienting Blast. I'm also going to open up the Abomination skill file. I'm going to move this over just so I can open some stuff up. And this way we can take a look at Rake and we can see the buffs that it applies if I'm not accidentally dragging things. Nether asks, does Jester's skills that boost Finale work the same way? That's right. Thank you for reminding me about that. I'm not familiar with recent changes since retiring from modding, so I'm a little behind on things. But yes, they do work the same way. I have not actually taken a look at the code for that, but it will be the exact same as Rake is set up. So we're going to copy this Rake buff one just so we can quickly find it, and we're going to open up the vanilla effects file. And here we go. So we see that Rake buff, it's just a regular effect, and we see that it calls two buff IDs. Since it buffs the damage, as we know from our previous streams, damage is actually two separate effects or buffs, because you need to apply it to the low amount of damage and the high amount of damage equally. So we're going to copy these then, and find the buffs file. Paste it, and here we can see the buffs for Rake. Here's for the first tier. We can see that it's set up very similarly to the other damage buffs. You know, it's a combat stat multiply, damage low and damage high, but the rule type here is a skill, because it is affecting another skill. And the string file, or the string value, is the ID of the skill that it affects, which is, of course, Rake. And this ID does need to match, and it is case sensitive. So we can copy a lot of what's here for the Plague Grenade boosting. We're going to come over to our, remember we're only doing this in the modded game, we're not actually doing it to our mod. But we are going to just put it in the same file. So we're going to come down here, we're going to put Plague Doctor bonus effects. And unfortunately this is going to override the Plague Doctor's file, which will invalidate you know, any other class changes you might have. Of course, though, this is just because we're, you know, doing viewer suggestions. So we already have it open. I just want to make sure. Let's go up here to Plague Grenade. And if we can find the Rake buffs here, I'm simply going to copy what is here, simply because it makes it easy for us to get rid of the existing buffs and put in our own. Of course, we could have just copied, you know, like one of the others, but it's not too big a deal. And before we go any further, it's very important that we notice a couple of things that are visible in this effect. First off, the chances are 100 across all tiers, I should say, and they don't need to be higher because it's a self buff. It doesn't work off of, you know, any resistances, much like these debuffs up here. So they only ever need to be 100. And the second thing that's important is this apply once. If you ever have a buff that is attached to a skill that hits more than one enemy or more than one hero, it's very important that this apply once tag is set to true. Because otherwise the buff would apply for each enemy that it hits. Plague Grenade hits 2 enemies, as does Rake, so it was important that this apply once is true so that this buff only applies once. So let's go ahead and name this Plague Doctor. I like to do you know, abbreviations for the hero, the skill that it applies to, and then what it does. So I will do Plague Grenade, and then I'll do Disorienting buff. It's long, but it does explain what it is. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I noticed the Q boolean a lot. I'm still not sure what it does. The Q boolean sets it to apply after all other buffs, I believe. I've actually never asked, I've always forgotten to ask what it does, but I'm pretty sure that it means it applies after all others. So any effects that are not queued will go first. Any effects that are queued will go in order of how they're queued. So if we take a look at like the Plague Doctor and we see these 3, let's just pretend, for instance, all 3 of these are queued. They will then be given in order. And you can use that to something like queuing a stun after a stun resist buff is given, or I mean, I'm pretty sure it's required for pretty much any stuns, and I think a few others like stress, I believe, is always queued. I do it to be safe in a lot of instances. There aren't a lot of times where I have to worry about certain things applying before others. Usually it only comes down to like really complex enemies that, you know, have multiple stages or something, and you need like a specific buff to apply after others or before the others. So, you know, if you want one to apply before the others, simply set all the others to queue, and then, you know, problem solved, right? So now we need to set up our buff IDs, and I don't think we have our buffs open. So let's go ahead and open our buffs. Now this is going to be a stun chance, which we have not worked with before. To make this easy, I'm just going to copy what's existing because I know what I'm looking for. So instead, we're going to name this PD Grenade. And it's going to be stun skill. Just something very short, succinct, you know, something that you can understand. There is no stats subtype for stun skills. It's simply going to be stun underscore chance. Ooh, now I'm questioning myself whether that is. I'm worried. Chat, you get me all worried that I wrote something wrong, and I don't want to be wrong. I'm not wrong. Okay, we're good. We're good. Better to make sure, though. And I think what we're going to do to each tier, also Nether kick, yeah, that's about what I thought it did. Very good. Glad you understood that, since I do always worry about whether or not I explain something well. Let's set the rule type for right now to skill, and the string, let's grab it, it's going to be Disorienting Blast. And let's start at a boost of 15%. And set this to B1 since we will have 5 tiers of this. And I'm going to raise it by 5 per tier is too much. Let's not do 5 per tier, because that'll get pretty ridiculous, you know, if it starts at 15 and it goes to like 35, right? That's a huge boost. And I think the stun skill chance on the Plague Doctor is, although it is just applying to Disorienting Blast, which I think does not get as much love as it probably should. Although I could be wrong, some of you might use it very rigorously. But I think instead let's do 17, 20, 22, and then 25. And this way at tier 3 and 5 it increases by 3 rather than 2. So I'm simply going to copy the first one, come over to our effects, paste it in for each tier, and name it 2, 3, 4, and 5. 10, 10, 15, 15, 20. Now normally I would do that, but it can make it so that each... I used to do that a lot. I used to have, you know, kind of tiers remain the same except for maybe at like upgrades 3 and 5, personally in PvD. But what I noticed is that people felt that certain upgrades just weren't very worthwhile. So instead, you know, like your 10, 10, 15, 15, 20, you could simply change it to be 10, 12, 15, 17, 20. And this way, it kind of eliminates people complaining like a certain upgrade doesn't do anything. Which may seem like you're just doing it to shut them up, but in all honesty, you kind of are. You know, it's like a 2% upgrade isn't very much, but would you rather them complain about not having any increase at all? So this way it kind of, you know, it gets rid of that issue. I'm actually gonna get rid of grenade. Yeah. Maybe I'm just too stuck on PvD, because in PvD accuracy doesn't increase based on skill level, it increases based on weapon level. I believe it is 5. It is 5 up here. See. Alright, so we want to, so now that our buffs are made, our effects are made, we can simply come up here to Plague Grenade and paste in our new effect. I'm gonna load up the game, but I will tell you that there is gonna be an issue. And I'll tell you how to fix that, because it's one of the things that I think I get asked the most concerning buffs that increase like something else, right? So if we come up here and we look at Plague Grenade, we're instantly going to see that the buff is there, but we have a missing string. Buff, rule, data, tooltip, disorienting blast. But our stun skill chance is there. So I'm going to show you where these are actually found. And we can simply come in here, and I don't know if they changed it recently with the localization. They did. They should all be in miscellaneous now. But if we look on data, tooltip, hopefully they are right here. Let's see. Ah, perfect. So we see right at the top we receive this Rake and Rage. We simply want to copy this, and we can come over to our mod string files. And for right now, I'm not going to put them in any of the other languages. I'm simply going to put them in English. Because again, this isn't going to be like a, you know, an official change. And I'm simply going to change Rake to Disorienting Blast. And then in here we can put the actual, the actual name for it. And we're going to close the game. We're going to quickly rebuild our localization. And let's run the game again. And now when we load up to the hamlet and we look at the Plague Doctor, she should have the proper string there for her buff. Disorienting Blast plus 15% stun skill chance. And I'm going to use a little bit of Dev Magic to level up this Plague Doctor and all the other heroes, just so we can see if the proper values are applying to each tier. 15, 17, 20, 22, and 25. Perfect. And if we wanted to check if this was actually working, of course, if it says there that, if it says there that it's working, it is. There is just no easy way to check, her stun skill chance, for instance. We have a little bit of Dev Magic. The one I can share is dash no restore. If you run the command line and you put dash no restore in, it will load up the dev hamlet. You won't have any of the commands and magic that I do, but it is a very easy way to quickly test things or to see changes on like heroes. Since it will load up a hamlet with what should be all the heroes, but I don't think they are. I think I did show you how to change that. If you come into scripts, the starting roster, you can simply put the hero classes in there, and that affects which ones show up into the hamlet when you load up a dev hamlet. Personally, I have my own script that I use for that, and that's simply all of the heroes. Even me as the jester. Let's go into the darkest dungeon. Actually, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't done that. Let me load it back up again. We'll do the tutorial quest with Seekers, and hopefully our Plague Doctor will have both skills. Perfect. Alright. Let's just load it up in here. And let's see if this applies properly. Fun little fact, actually, I designed this tutorial quest. It's not bad. There are a few things I might change about it now, looking in hindsight, but I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a very good way to introduce people to the game. Refamiliarize yourself with like curios and whatnot, and start off with some easy fights. I'm gonna kill these guys with Dev Magic, just so we can find a fight that our Plague Doctor can hit. Alright, so when we use this, we should get the buff on her for the 50% stun skill chance. And that's perfect. So you can see that for 3 rounds she has plus 50% stun skill chance. You think that's super speed? I think you can speed up to like 16 times. It's ridiculous. Like, it's really good for testing though. I hope in the future that Red Hook does release some more commands for modders to use. So I'm gonna just hit one of these, and we're gonna just use Disorienting Blast. There is no way to again tell that. I think you can turn off the past turn penalty. I know it's somewhere. And you know what? I think I'm gonna find it for you. Alright. So there's no way for us to know if this stun skill chance is actually being applied, but I can say that it is being applied if it shows up here. I can't play without a speed up mod anymore. Base game is so slow. To be honest, I agree. It's not bad, it's just, I mean, especially if you're like modding, you don't have time to play the game, unless you're, specifically testing, but usually you're trying to test something. So we can see that this buff is working. A lot of people forget that you need the string, but the string is very easy to find. Simply, if you ever see a missing string, screenshot it or write it down or remember it, because all you have to do is search for that string and you can probably find something that's very similar to it to copy and mimic. Now, let's close this. Let's close these and let's find your turn penalty. It's going to be in one of two places. Either going to be in the effects or it's going to be in the rules file, which is a file that is large and full of a lot of things. For right now, let's do it's 6 stress. There's bark stress, that's 6, that's the only one. I don't think pass is gonna do it. So it might be in rules. Pass turn stress damage that we see right there. So in the shared folder and in the rules.json file, these are a lot of de-hard-coded values that were added with mod support and subsequent updates. And going over all these would just take way too much time. Way too much time. But you can see right up at near the top here, this pass turn stress damage simply is a integer value. It's got a decimal point though, so it's actually a float. But treat it as an integer because that's how stress works, is in integers. And that is the amount of stress to be applied. This file is large and full of rules. Yeah. Yes, it is. It's a lot of stuff. I recommend to go onto let me see my guides. In the official modding guide, where did I go over rules? In the core rules and progression type, I do go over some of the big ones here. There's so much to it that I could, you could make a huge guide just on every individual one in here. Most of them are pretty, they should be understandable. You shouldn't have any questions about like max number of camping skills. What does that do, right? But if there are any that you don't understand, the best thing I can do is simply say to just test. Just experiment, just test. If something breaks, it breaks. If it doesn't, you may have found something new you can do. So that is where that file is located. To anyone who's joining or lurking, again, if you have any questions about something that you have just even the slightest question about, hopefully I'll be able to answer it. Please ask it. If you have any questions about the previous modding tutorials, like you missed something or something wasn't properly explained by me because I didn't do my job well, simply ask and I can show something again. We have some extra time today. There is nothing that's off the table. Apart from like art and animation, I cannot do art and animation. I don't know how to do that. I'm a big old dummy when it comes to that. But if it's anything to do with like the data, I probably have done it or know how to do it. Hopefully. The third viewer suggestion that I had was adding a repost to guard dog. That's a little bit more complicated, but we can do it. Another asks, are sound files moddable at all? Like, can you add custom sounds? Yes, you can, but it's very backwards at the moment. I don't want to get too deep into that, especially since my personal opinions on it are pretty passionate. What I can say though is that you need third-party software for it, and if you want to know how to do it, the modding guide does have an audio section that covers it. However, existing sounds are not available to modders at the moment. I don't know if they ever will be. and referencing sounds isn't as easy as it probably could be. I think Redhook is working on it. Again, I'm not an official spokesperson or an employee of Redhook, so I don't take my word as truth. Let's get this riposte added. It is riposte. It is not repost. I do have to say that. I get it wrong too, so don't feel bad if you get it wrong. It is a shame, unfortunately. But if you ever want to know the status of it, you can simply tweet Redhook, or I don't want to say send them an email, because I think the only email that they have available is like one for business and one for bugs, and it's it's neither of those. But a Reddit post or a tweet would probably be the best bet. So the first thing we want to do, of course, is open up, not the effects, the heroes. Lose my mind here. And I want to open up somebody who has a riposte. And I'm going to open up the Highwayman for that. And we're going to want to open up both his art and his info file. I'm just going to drag it over here so I can quickly open both of them. And then we're going to open up the Houndmaster's art and info files as well. And then I want to open up one more thing. I want to open up the effects file for both our mod and the base game. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put Houndmaster riposte. And then we're going to come over to the Highwayman, find his Duelist Advance, which of course applies the riposte. And we're going to quickly search and find for this, just so we have it right available. Let's take a look at what this riposte effects actually do. So we can see that it's got targeted performer. It has this riposte 1 variable to it. Riposte on hit chance add and on miss chance add is 100%, so it's guaranteed to apply riposte even if you were to miss an enemy. The riposte duration is 2 rounds. On hit true, on miss true. And then we can see here that it applies a damage modifier to the riposte for minus 40%, which gets, I guess, lower in this case because it's a negative value. So you slowly start to get a little bit more damage from it as you rank it up. And then in addition, it has a crit chance that's applied to it as well as you rank it up. 0, 0, 1, 1, and then 2. So for right now, I'm simply going to copy all of what's here because we can modify it afterwards. And I'm going to paste this into our Houndmaster riposte. But I want our Houndmaster's riposte to do something a little different. I want it to apply a very, very light bleed on the target when, a target targets him. Just to target a lot there. For right now, let's simply name this HM for Houndmaster, and we're just gonna paste it in. Again, we don't want any of these effects to kind of override the vanilla ones. And as I say that, we actually do have your dog treats and holy water in our mod file. Why did we never get rid of those? Can somebody tell me why we never got rid of those? They shouldn't be in there. No, I'm gonna put that in there. I'm gonna put that in our commit. Removed vanilla effects because we forgot to, like dum-dums. And there we go. So then we've already made our mod a little bit better. But back to our back to our riposte. So we of course we want the riposte on hit chance add to be 100%. Duration is fine. On hit, on miss, true, yes. Of course, guard dog can't hit anything. You know, because it targets one of your heroes at a 100% chance. It's simply a redundancy to put on miss, true, because it can't ever miss. But it's just safe to do that anyway. You know, just in case. Just in case the engine decides that for some reason you missed a guard. The damage, I think we won't need to change at the moment. I'm simply going to delete that. If we want to add it later, we can, but I don't think it's too necessary. Well, actually, I'm going to undo that. I think we can, but instead of it being a negative value, I will simply increase the damage. I don't want to crit. I think that's a little bit too OP if the Houndmaster's riposte that can bleed can also crit. You know, we don't want it to be too powerful, right? Make sure we don't have these extra periods at the end. Instead of applying a negative value, I'm simply going to, for the first rank, it's not going to have any damage modifier. Then it's going to be 10%, not negative. Uh, 15, 20, and then 25. Were these at 15? We're fine. We're good. All right. So we've got everything except for our bleed effect. And I think if we come up all the way to the top, we should still see this riposte example up here. And we can see that at the, there's a couple things you want to add. First off, there's an attack rating modifier. And that's important because if we look at the Highwayman's riposte skill, there's only one. There's only one level to it. It can't be increased because it can't be purchased. You know, there's nothing at the guild hall to increase a riposte skill directly. So this attack rating of 85% is always going to be in effect. And that can be pretty dangerous because at high ranks, this attack rating isn't actually going to matter very much compared to lower difficulties. So we want to increase the attack rating of a riposte skill by 5% on each tier. And this way, as you rank it up, it still maintains the accuracy that it should have at that tier. And there we go. And now lastly, we have this riposte effect, which calls yet another effect. So let's come here and let's paste that at the end of each one. I want that space along with it. But instead of weird bleed, of course, we don't want weird bleed. Let's come here, put another section below it, and let's see if we can find a quick minor bleed. Duration, DOT1, with a duration of 3, which means 1 point for 3 rounds. I think a minor bleed is perfect for this skill, to be honest. And you want, instead of making our own ability, or our own effects, I'm simply going to copy in the minor bleed. And I think its chances are okay, yeah. We don't want it to be too OP. We don't want it to be too weak either. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Perfect. So let's come here and let's copy the effect for the Houndmaster riposte. And then come into the Houndmaster's info file and paste it into to guard dog. Now, I'm worried about one thing here, and I don't know if it was ever adjusted. You used to be only able to put 4 effects into a single hero's effect file, or I should say effect, like whatever, you know, the amount of effects. You can only have 4 on a hero. And I don't know if that was ever changed. I think it might have been, but to be safe, to be on the safe side, I want to consolidate. I'm not sure how we could do that. Let me check the Abomination for a second, because I think that the A-Bomb has more than one, or more than 4 effects applied to his transform, which this is kind of a big old cluster of effects. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It does have 5, so hopefully we should be fine. If we you know, if we're not, we'll make it work. So there's a couple of things. We don't actually have a riposte skill. It calls a riposte, but I just called it 2 different things there. We don't have a skill set up like the Highwayman. And this is as simple as coming in here and copying his data for the riposte skill. It's not complicated. There isn't anything special to it. It's going to look the exact same, so we can just paste it below. And the type is melee. Actually, it's going to be ranged, not melee. Of course. The damage is 0%, and damage modifiers on heroes work a little bit differently from that of an enemy. If you set the damage value on an enemy to 0, they won't do any damage. But this is a modifier, and in short, it means that it modifies the base damage of the hero. So if it has a 0% modifier, it means it doesn't modify it at all, compared to minus 100%, which means it gets rid of all of the damage. Whereas 100% would mean it doubles the damage. That's always important to keep in mind. We don't want this to be crit valid, so we'll simply set this to false and set this to 0. The attack rating, I'm going to set to, I think 85 is okay. It's up there with Hound's Rush and Hound's Harry. I don't think it needs to change. And that looks good. But lastly, we don't have an animation set for the riposte. It doesn't automatically know what to look for, which is why we have the art files open. So let's come over to the Highwayman, and we can see that right here, the riposte skill calls the ID of riposte 1, which is this ID here. The animation for it is the attack slice, which is used for Wicked Slice and Open Vein. The effects of it are open veins. In the target chest effects, which are of course the enemy, is the blood spatter. So I'm going to copy this just to make it easy. Put it below our combat move skill. And I think we're going to use the attack Sikkim. I like that. Wonder if that's originally what they're going to name the skill instead of Hound's Rush. I like that. And the effects for this, we want to use the Hound's Rush effects. And of course, on the target, we want to have a blood spatter. And that should be good. We load up the game, hopefully, if we've done everything right, because I have not added a riposte skill in a long time. We should, if we do not have a Houndmaster. That's obviously going to complicate things. Do I have PBD's files open still? I do not. I'm going to copy over its script, because I think it's much better than the one that's in vanilla at the moment. Now we should have a Houndmaster for sure. Alright. So on Guard Dog, we have C here, the Guard Ally self activates riposte and buff self for plus 15% dodge. So we do have the riposte active, and now we need to test if it's actually working. So let's put our Houndmaster in rank 2. Let's do this group setup. Just something easy. And we'll just embark. We don't really care about anything else. And hopefully we can get one of these rabble in the beginning here to attack our Houndmaster. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit so we can get there sooner. Alright. So I'll pass the turn with everybody else. And with our Houndmaster, we will simply guard a hero. So now we can see the riposte is active, which is great because if the effect didn't work, of course, we wouldn't see that appear, but we do have it appearing, and that is perfect. And we'll pass again, and hopefully one of these rabble, since they can only hit ranks 1 and 2, unless I'm really being stupid and forgetting that they can hit rank 3, we should see our riposte activate, and it will use the same animation as Hound's Rush, and it should attempt to apply a bleed. Of course it won't, but if we see the resist, it means that it did try to apply the bleed, which is perfect. Here we go. And there we go. Perfect. And we saw the resist. So our riposte is working perfectly. It's doing a ton of damage. Of course, it isn't very balanced at the moment because it's really OP, but you can always adjust the damage value, of course, on your own. It's not really important to me to balance it since it's not really part of any a mod. It's just kind of something we're showing how to do, and you can balance it on your own. So this is perfect. It's working beautifully. I don't really like that animation though. I want to switch it to the Hound's Harry one. I think that one's better. I kind of want to do that. So let's do the attack rush. That's the wrong one. We want the attack rush here. Perfect. Let's load back up. I personally like the Hound's Harry animation for it better. Just because it's like, oh, you tried to hit me. Good luck, buddy. You'll see if you know what I'm talking about. You know what it looks like. I like it personally. And while we're testing, of course, if anybody has any questions or wants something repeated, please let me know. All right. Got to deal with all the tutorial pop-ups. No, we don't. Luckily. All right, so let's see if we can get this riposte active again before the skeletons hit us, ideally. Otherwise, we have to wait yet another round. All right. So hopefully we should see it once here. Perfect. I kind of like that one. But either way, you can simply set any of the animations that you want to appear yourself, and this will work for any hero. Now, if we wanted to, let's retreat back to town here very quickly. I did not mean to go into this. I wanted to retreat back to town. Just so we can check if the buffs are applying to the riposte when we upgrade the Houndmaster. Perfect. So we can see the plus damage, plus 10% damage when riposte, which is weird wording, of course. It, ideally should be like when riposte is active or something. We can see that it is applying the damage and the accuracy boost. Although I would have lowered the damage too of the riposte. But it's working perfectly. So applying a riposte is also very easy. Just a couple things you got to be careful of. Animations. If you are missing an animation, I believe it won't crash, but it just won't show. So that's something to keep your eye out for. We have only pretty much covered an hour. So if there are any questions, it doesn't have to be just about, like modding. If you're wondering like, is there any good modding etiquette, any things to keep in mind, or, what's the best way to keep track of changes or to make people aware of changes? There are some things we'll be going over the next couple of days, or I should say the next couple of streams. You know, like how to create maps. You know, we'll be going over all that. So some things might come in the next 2 streams, and of course uploading the mod to Steam, which will be the final thing that we do. I know that's probably something that a lot of people wonder, but we will make sure that's taken care of. There is one thing I want to do simply to make manual modding easier. The problem is if we try to RAR this our mod folder, much like I do with PBD, because I manually upload as well. Is it possible to make epic maps? Absolutely, you can make maps as long as you want, and the length of them is set within the quest file. So, you know, you can set that up yourself. You can even make your own lengths. I do that personally to make it so that, you know, if I have like a really short quest, I can limit the amount of provisions that are available for that quest. I do that. Let me see if I can get that open. Let's see. I don't want this appearing because I'll get in trouble. Let me switch to that and turn off the sound. Give me 1 second. That should be good. I do apologize for that. I don't have a shortcut to the scripts to load them up on PBD. I can show you. I can show you quickly kind of how it's set up with PBD here on the tutorial quest, since it will be a different length. Another asks, can skills be made to hit allies, either hero skills or enemies hitting their allies? I mean, ones that do damage? Yeah, you should be able to. I can test it. Yeah, it should be very simple. I don't anticipate there to be any issues with that, and I will show that in 1 second. Once this loads up. So we can see how I set up the different lengths. So I have a completely remade tutorial in PBD. Let me see if we can find it. We're gonna want to open up the quest file, the plot quest. Close all but this. Where is it? Go. This downloading. Ignore the missing strings. Alright, so if we start up PBD's tutorial quest here, we'll see immediately that only 3 things are available: food, torches, and shovel. But this is still a short quest, much like this one in the Cove is. They're both short, but this one has a lot more things available to purchase. And how that's set is simply within the plot quest file. We can see right up here, the plot tutorial crypts. The length of this is set to 0. And if we know from when we worked on, or if I showed the provisions, I think we messed around, we can see that the store items for 0, because again, these square brackets are set up in length, so we can see length 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. And you can set what is available for each length. So if you want to make a new quest that's like super long or super short, but you don't want so many things to be available, simply make it a new length, and then define what is purchasable. So for that tutorial, only food, torches, and shovels. Of course, you will have to set the starting length inventory up here as well. Even if you don't have anything given, you need to set up an additional one. So that's very simple. All right, another you asked, can skills be made to hit allies? Other hero skills are yes. Yes, you can. Let's see here. This should be very simple. This should be as easy as coming into Crusaders file into Smite, and instead of targeting 1 and 2, we want this to target other heroes. And we can see this with like Inspiring Cry here, or Battle Heal. It's simply, you put the @ symbol in front of it, and we're just going to do this for level 1. And we're going to set them available to hit every single ally. If you put a tilde in front of it, this would mean that it hits all of these ranks at the same time, and the @ would mean that it's all allies. But we just want to hit 1 at the moment. And this should be as simple as loading up the game and plopping into a dungeon. This should deal damage, yes. If it doesn't, there should be another way, but I believe this will deal damage. I believe with CC they did add a way via effects to deal damage, but this should deal damage. It's going to look weird because the animation is like slicing forward, and obviously Reynold is in the front, so you know it's going to look weird, but it absolutely should deal damage. Maybe we can even take a look at it and see that, you know, it just does damage. Hopefully. If it doesn't, then it's a little weird. Granted, things that target your own heroes don't show everything. So, if it doesn't work, it might not. We'll take a look into other options if it doesn't work. Let's just pass our turn until Reynold acts, and we'll see if it does. Didn't do any damage, but it did hit. So, knowing that obviously, of course, works, let's come into Crimson Court's effects, which I believe are going to be in the actual Crimson Court. Let's see, I believe they added a way to force damage in here. If not, we might be out of luck. But we will check as well if enemies can do it. No idea what I'm looking for. There's some cool things that they added though, mainly like being able to change and add initiatives, wherever that is. I saw it for a second. Let's just search damage, which I know is going to start pulling up the damage high and low, but let's see if there's anything here that actually does damage. Ah, perfect. Health damage 6. So let's come back to the Crusader, and instead of let's load up the base effects. You know, you already understand that we're not modifying the game. Really, the best thing you can do is just, like I did, look through the effects, find something that is already in place, and kind of work off of that. You know, use some creative juices there, and just see what you can do. Just play around with it, you know. Okay. So let's come over to the Crimson Court. Let's just copy this. Target, all the way I like it in quotes because it's just keeps uniform. Chance is 100. Crusader, smite damage. Doesn't matter what you name it. On hit true. It can't miss. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, we're just testing to see if it works. We're not really caring about balance or anything else at the moment. which case I didn't even need to make ones for other ranks, but that's okay. Alright. Let's see if the effect changes, because I have not ever played with this effect before. So it doesn't even show that it does damage on the tooltip, because of course this was never intended to be applied to a hero. Which is again something you have to work around. Some things may be possible, but it doesn't mean they were ever intended. And it may not show up in tooltips, which is very difficult to convey to your users, of course, when something doesn't show up in tooltips, if it's even there. And that can be dangerous with buff skills, like, or things that target your own team. Because this doesn't say that it does anything, right? It doesn't even show how much damage it does. So we can definitely tell this was never intended to be a feature of the game. Alright. So let's pass our turn until Reynolds acts. And let's see if we can actually do damage. The effect should be set up properly. So let's see. Perfect. So we did 6 damage. So you can do that. And because that skill was pulled from an enemy, you should absolutely be able to apply that to an enemy as well. Now it was set to QE true. I kind of want to remove the Q just off of my own curiosity to see if it applies the damage right away, instead of, you know, queuing it for after the animation plays. And we have extra time to burn, so we can always test it, right? But it will have to be in effect, you know, if you have a hero. So I'm glad that we've been able to successfully recreate that for you, since it seems you're interested in wanting to utilize that for probably a class rebalance or a class mod itself. It did indeed. I'm very happy. There's one other thing I did kind of want to try, and I think you guys might find it pretty interesting. Especially for a slow character like the Crusader, we can continue to work on. But for now, I do want to see if this will apply immediately. Because we used it with Q true, and it applied the damage after the animation, so hopefully this applies it during the animation right away. Let's see here. Perfect, so it applied it right away. So you can either just not include Q on your effect or set it to false. Both will be the same, and it will apply the damage straight away. Perfect. There's one other thing I wanted to try with the Crusader. I want to keep this open. There are these initiative changes, and I kind of want to see if we can make use of that. I'm just going to pop down here into Battle Heal. We're just going to kind of modify Battle Heal a little bit. I'm going to call it Runet add 1, Former, we want it to be Target, Initiative change 1, Anadrum is true, Q, no, yes, I do want it to Q. And I'm going to apply this to Battle Heal. I'm going to be working kind of fast on this one. I probably shouldn't. Probably should explain what I'm doing. So we're adding this, so hopefully if we set it to target all of our heroes at the same time, except for the Crusader, we can create a skill that adds back the initiatives to the heroes, which is really OP. But it can be, it's interesting. You could make a skill that just targets one hero, and that's okay. I mainly would just want to show what you can do, and then you can use that information to make something more balanced or something, interesting. So we're going to come in here to Defender, and I'm going to copy this self-target valid false. It's very OP. It's definitely OP. But it is cool. And I'm going to paste this in here. And what this means is that because we have it set to target all of our heroes, including the Crusader, whatever rank he's in, we don't want it to give him back an initiative, because what that might do is make it so that he can infinitely give the teammates initiatives back, which is scary. The problem with this also is that if you include two Crusaders in the same team, you could pretty much infinitely give yourself initiative. So I'd be very, very careful if you're adding this to a hero. What I recommend doing is making it so that hero cannot be, you can't have two of the heroes at the same time in the same group. And that would effectively make it so that you would never have a situation where people would bring two of them and then infinitely have initiatives being given. But this should work. It launches from 1 and 2, targets the entire team. The effect looks good. Let's see if this works. We might have a missing string. I anticipate it. But for now, we can simply see if this works at all. It might not. Battle kill shows nothing, which is always a very good start to a mod. Again, this is probably not ever intended to be possible. I do need to unlock that skill, actually. Let me give myself some gold and pass some weeks with more dev magic. There we go. So if you are applying this to a mod for a hero, do know that there is no string in place to actually make this appear. All right, let's get into this first battle and see what we have. So these, we've had both Dismas and Paracelsus, I believe is their name. Paracelsus. Is it Paracelsus or Paracelsus? Whatever her name is. We're going to use this and see if it gives them back their initiatives. It does. Look at that. And it even gave the Vestal 2 initiatives. So, this is very OP. You should not need it active, no. You will, not only will you probably not need the DLC active, because of course when we're forcing the town there is no actual DLC, but you may not need to own the DLC. They should be hard-coded into the executable. Because as you can see, when we force the town here, we don't have the districts or the flagellant or the crimson curse, so we don't have districts. There's no crimson court, so they should just be available. Yes, very, very good to know. I'm glad you asked that. It's very important. Let's see what else the crimson court added in terms of effects. What do we have? Could be a cool effect for Berserking Brew. Could be, yeah. Yeah, a potion that adds an initiative. I'm almost tempted to add something like that into PBD. You guys think that'd be a good addition for a potion? Be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Yeah, additional stress, but one more initiative. It's dangerous. It's very powerful. I think I kind of want to. You've officially inspired me to do it. I'm writing it down. That's if you don't hear me talking or pushing that. That's it. And I will actually credit you too. I do like to credit people who inspire changes like that. You shall be in the post. Let's see what else we have here though. So Set mode isn't new. That's used for that's a very, very complex thing. I don't want to go over because mainly you need animations for it, and it takes a long time to do. But I would say if you're interested in setting modes, take a look at the crocodile or the apparently the statue as well, or the abomination for how that's set up. Summons. No. Don't want to do summons. It's not new. I don't look at new stuff. It's hard to know what's new. You kind of have to go over each one. Swap source and target's a fun one. That's used from the Antiquarian. As you can see here, it's copied from the Antiquarian. That basically swaps the effects from the source and target, which for the most part isn't necessary, because simply you can apply an effect that works on a target or a performer individually. But for guards, it's pretty cool because it forces a protection. Forces a guard, which is cool. Man, I don't see anything. There is one. There's like the set monster class, which is pretty cool. So it basically can change a monster into something else via an effect. So that's pretty cool. Jolly Roger the Man asks, how can you use the damage received percent in the buffs file? Damage received percent. Are you asking how to use it? Oh, can you use the damage received percent to force? Oh wait, that's somebody different. You both have the same color. Jolly, can you rephrase what you're asking? Like, are you asking how to use it, or I don't know what you're asking. You can't give somebody riposte, and I'm going to explain why. I mean, you can, but I really highly recommend that you don't do it, because you would need to give every single, if you would give it to like say a hero, like a buff skill that gives a riposte, you would then need to give every single hero a riposte animation and skill and effects, because you could give it to any hero, right? Or if you could give it to an enemy, you would need to give a riposte skill to every single enemy that exists, because there's no way to like turn it off if a certain enemy is present. So that's very dangerous to do. You can do it, but you're gonna have to really work for it. Alright, so Jolly, you're saying to make health percentage. I mean, I can show you how to use it's very easy to use the to like apply it. It's just a buff type that makes them receive more damage. Which I do have on one thing. Let me show it. Let me switch to my other thing here 1 second, because I gotta do a little bit more dev magic. The stream is not gone, I promise you. Alright, we can switch back. We're all good. Oh, always starts up with really loud sound. Alright. So I do have some of PBD's trinkets. The tarot cards, for instance, where the Fool, where is the Fool? Gives the hero plus damage received. And this effect is not the same as like minus prot, which would work the same way. The thing is, prot can't go negative. Damage received can, in a way. So damage received kind of overrides prot. it works the same. So if your hero has 10% prot and you give them plus 10% damage received, basically that nullifies the protection they have. But damage received also applies to dots. So if you have plus 10% damage received and you're taking a 10 point per round dot, you will actually end up taking 11 damage per round. Don't know how to say it, but like the Pyre or the Hag Cauldron, which makes damage percentage off their max HP. That can only be applied to a captor, which is what the Hag is. So let's open up the Hag's files here. Where are the Hag's files? Not the Hag, we want the Cauldron. I'm sorry. Cauldron full. But we can see here that the captor full applies kind of the effects of what happens with the Hag's Cauldron. But we can skip that for now because you're only asking about the per turn damage percent, which is applied here. It applies 8.75% because this is a float value shown as a there's a percentage shown as a float value, so the decimal gets moved over 2 places for calculation. So 8.75% of the hero's max HP is applied per turn. Is there a way to code it into a hero skill? Probably not. Unfortunately. You can play around with it, see if there's something hidden that even I don't know about, but as far as I can tell you, 99% of the time, if there's something that doesn't exist on the hero side of things, or on the global side of things, it can't be like jerry-rigged to make work for heroes. So probably not. Which is unfortunate, but you know, it just is the case. What else do we have? Did I miss any questions? Make cultists turn into other cultists, or turn other cultists into ghouls. Yeah, you absolutely could. One thing you have to be worried about, though, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Can I just call you Osaka or something? Is that easy? Also, no problem, Jolly. Please, if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask. When you turn, if you use that to turn other enemies into, because you're turning cultists basically, which are size 1 enemies, into size 2, it can be very easy to cause a crash because you make the enemies take up 5 spaces. It's absolutely is possible. You just have to be really careful about how you code the AI so that if it detects, that there are already 4, that the size of the enemies is already 4, which is max, that it can't use that skill. But yeah, it would be very possible. You seem to be able to set the monster class ID, reset the HP if you want, clear its initiatives if you want, reset the buffs on it, reset the scale, set the cooldowns and the monster brains. There's some cool stuff you could do with it. What else? I don't know what this does. This feed corpse. I don't have a lot of knowledge of CC at all. You can make an enemy that removes initiatives on heroes, which is pretty cool. You can make some pretty cool enemies that do that. Like at the start of their, as a bonus initiative, like we did with our of martyrdom affix. You could make an enemy that, as a bonus initiative at the start of every turn, removes a initiative from a random hero. What else is there? These aren't used. Crimson Swarm, Blood Counter. I wonder if they're just not used. There's this Parasite Egg. There's this new DOT for Egg. I don't know what that does. There's another DOT. You can force barks, which is really cool. So you can have an enemy skill that forces a certain bark from a hero. There's some cruel stuff you can do. Of course, we went over the health damage. Skill Instant. I'm not quite sure what Skill Instant does. Have any of you fought the vampire and know what this this kill is, or I don't know what it does. But if you know what it does, or if you kind of have an idea of what this might do, there's a new Skill Instant thing. Pretty sweet. Of course, based on from the Flagellant, you can now steal certain buff stat types. That's always cool too. It's not much else, but yeah, a lot of new effect variables. So a lot of cool stuff to work with. I'm actually gonna revert all the changes here. Let me see. Let's clean up. Delete unversion files and folders, and revert all changes recursively. Just so that when we do test the mod changes on the next couple of streams, we have a clean vanilla version of the game to work with. There we go. Again, Tortoise SVN is super awesome. It just deleted everything that we added and reverted everything that we had changed. So we have a pristine working copy of the vanilla game now, again. So are there any other things that people have questions about? This is your last chance to do so, I'm afraid. The next two streams, like I said earlier, are going to be very focused on getting the map to work, because it's going to take a lot of time. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Even the slightest things can break, and it's definitely one of the more difficult things you can do within modding is to create your own maps. Tons and tons of things can break. Is there a way to make another kind of progression? What do you mean? Mean for like progressing weeks? The DLC progression is in the form of infestation. 4 stages. To that, I have nothing more than what I might be able to see. I have no knowledge of it. I have not modded CC at all. I don't know where to look, but we can there is an infestation progression, but I don't know if this is the place to put it. I guess so. I mean, you have the ID of infestation. I don't know where these are stored. I know that infestation, I believe, is a quirk. It's not going to be in here. And these quirks are, they get very, 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 very complex. Let me see here. We have the ID for the infestation. I'm going to search the DLC for the ID. It's going to search everything, but this is a very easy way to simply, if you like, you find an ID and you don't know where else it's referenced, simply do a find all in, either pretty much all the Darkest Dungeon folder or everything else. It's only referenced once, unfortunately. All right, let's try just with infestation, which should give us a lot more entries, a lot of things we might not need, but we should be able to see everywhere the infestation is shown. Narration, no. Audio banks, no. Colors, no. We do have the progression open. We can see that the plot quests do apply these infestation elements. So it does seem like you might be able to make something work, but it's going to be very, very difficult. There's going to be a lot that you need to just take very carefully. Most of these are strings, but it does seem possible. I can't say it's impossible, but I can't say it's possible to make work without issue. As you might get 95% of the way through making it and realize there's something hard-coded that keeps you from finishing. Another asks, can you take a look at the Flagellant info file? Can some of those unique effects like Death's Door triggers and health thresholds effect be used for other lists? 100% yes. I do know that for a fact, and I will show that. It's right at the bottom. We have the HP reaction right here. You can even set the overstretch, which is affliction. You can force a specific affliction or virtue if they get overstressed. The death reaction is the effects that it has on enemies and allies. And where is the Death's Door? Death's Door buffs are right here. Of course, you can set them individually. He has his own Death's Door buffs. And doesn't he do something when he hits Death's Door as well? I swear he has. Wait, right here. Enter effects for a heart attack. Oh wait, no, these are for Death's Door still. It's just one big long line. Okay, so yeah, Death's Door, the enter effects right here. And it sets this effect right here. So let me pull back to, actually, nope, they're in the same place. Right down here, it just calls an effect. And it targets performer group other, which means every single other hero except for the Flagellant himself, or from the performer himself, him or herself. And then the effects that it applies. In this case, it heals 10% of their HP. And there is a 1 round cooldown on that. So if you simply wanted to apply this to another hero, you would come into any hero, we'll open the Antiquarian for instance, and in the Death's Door, simply apply this after the effects, and then set whatever effect you want to happen. Some people find him strong. I'm inclined to agree, but, you know, other people don't like him. Other people may think he's a little weak. I think, I think it works. What he has works. So you can apply, and again, you do not need the DLC to make that work. Of course, it's easier if you have the DLC because you can copy things much easier, but you don't need the DLC for those additional effects to work. They should just be part of the vanilla game as well. They're just only used in the DLC. Are there any other questions? What does controlled target rank end in which end is 1, 2, 3, 4? That is for when heroes are charmed. It shows what rank they'll be pulled into. So Crusader, obviously, just because he's a front rank hero, he probably has 1. Whereas a Vestal will probably have 3 or 4. So controlled target rank 1, and the Vestal controlled target rank 4. And that's for when they're charmed by the Siren. Or any charming ability actually will pull them into that controlled rank. You could. You absolutely could make the leper go into rank 4 if you wanted to, but his vanilla target rank is 1. It's a good question, though. It's not immediately easy to see what that actually represents. Thankfully, I did know that one, though. Because there are some things that I do not know about modding. Even though I know, I hope I know a good deal of it. Mainly because I failed at knowing. Most of what I learned from modding was from trying and failing and finally figuring out a way to make it work. Or just getting really lucky with something working. Are there any other questions? I probably have time for another 1 or 2, depending on the difficulty. Of course, if you if you think of something after the stream, again, just hop into our Discord, and in the other mods channel or something, you can ask, and either I can help, or if I'm not available, somebody else can hopefully help you. Another, but I think you can't properly answer, is there a good way to mod sounds? Good guide. There is the official guide, which does go over it here. And if you want the link to that, I can paste it in chat. And it's all the way at the bottom. Of course, you can use the table of contents on the right. They go along guide. No. Probably not. I haven't messed around with it too much. I don't have very much familiarity with it. I hope somebody else can make one in that case, especially as well with art and animation, because I don't do any of that. I hope somebody else can make a tutorial stream on that. I wish I could touch on all the bases for modding, but I don't know them all. My skills are not that not that broad, sadly. Any other questions? If there aren't, I will begin by pulling up the schedule. We are on day 8. We only have 2 streams left after this one. Your DLC create new light rules. Alright, let me show that. It's not new light rules, but there are the districts that affect the light. You can access the vanilla light rules in the rules file. They start right here. In other regions, I do not know. I can check. I think you can only override via districts. Because the districts modify it, where do they do it at? It's in here, I believe. We have this darkness buff list that modifies the existing buffs, if that's what you were referencing, unless you were referencing the fact that Crimson Court has some rules as well. Apparently not. But I think what you were referencing was the districts. I don't think you can use it in other regions. I think it's global. With that, let me go over the schedule. So the next two streams, I always assume that these streams aren't going to take very long, and then they do. However, for stream 9 and 10, I unfortunately anticipate a ridiculous amount of time. I could be wrong. They could not take very long at all. I'm going to try to get as much pre-design work done in them as possible. Jolly, I will get to yours just a second. Just want to go get through the stream overview. I don't know how much time they'll take, but if we absolutely have to, I will create a bonus 11th stream, but I don't think we'll have to. I'm going to get as much pre-design work as possible done, just to make sure that we can get this done in a timely fashion, and we don't spend too much time, in a spreadsheet working on the new map. So, Jolly, yes, there's a new torch option called Bloodlight. Can you mod this one in another region? I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'll see if I can find it for you. Let me see. It's called Bloodlight. Let's see. Do you know if it's called Bloodlight with one word or just 2 words? Might be blood_light too. Let's see. All right, torch setting, Crimson Court, quest plot, quest. Jason. Quest generation, torch, raid settings. So we do have torch settings enabled. Kind of wanted to. I want to have that back up a second. Let me bring that up while we're looking at this. Torch burn down enabled, false. Hero buff list, so you can apply a buff. You can apply overlays. Torch setting item buffs, which applies a buff to a torch apparently. And then you can apply these into the quest generation. So yes, but I don't see there actually being any. It simply looks like there's a boolean for whether or not the torch can burn down, and then there are buffs that are applied. I don't know when these are applied. You would probably know better than I would, since I've never played very much of this. But it at least looks like you could do some things with different regions and the torches. And then there are actually a darkness override table for CC. And these also apply here. So it looks like you can create completely custom, at the very least, custom buffs and like the regular torchlight modifiers for other dungeons. There's hallway stress, but I don't think you can like change how much the torch goes down in a different region. You'd have to test it, but it does look like you have a bit of freedom with that. So with that, I am going to call it quit there. Very long stream. Again, I don't have the stream endurance that a normal streamer does, but I hope that we did cover a lot today. And finally, just to reiterate, if you have any further questions post-stream, simply join the Discord and we can help you out. So thank you again for showing up. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and catch us on Friday for the first day of creating our custom map at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you as well, Jolly, for showing up and asking so many questions. I hope that I helped you. I hope that I helped everybody else. And thank you again, everybody. Take care.